You should be grateful we still answer your calls. Those 8 words hit me like a slap. I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the pot of stew I'd just made. My son Derek's voice was cold, like I was a stranger bothering him instead of the woman who raised him. I didn't cry. I just froze. My name is Margaret Elwood. I'm 73 years old, and that phone call changed everything. But let me back up, because cruelty doesn't appear overnight. It grows slowly, like mold in corners you stop checking. Have you ever felt invisible to the people you love most? If you've experienced that heartbreak, please like this video and subscribe. Because what happened next is a story about how silence became my greatest weapon. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. 6 months earlier, things were different. Derek used to call every Sunday after church, like clockwork. His voice warm, asking about my week. His wife Lana would add updates about the grandkids, and their laughter in the background made my empty house feel alive again. Those calls were everything to me, but slowly they changed. 5 minutes instead of 20. Then they started skipping weeks. Derek's voice got that edge, the one that said he had better places to be. Mom, can this wait? We're heading out. Of course, dear. I just wanted to. I'll call you back later. Later never came. I'd sit by the phone Sunday afternoons, tea getting cold, watching the clock tick past noon, past 1, past 2, wondering what I'd done wrong. Had I talked too much? Been too needy? That's what happens when people pull away. You blame yourself, not them. My daughter Miriam wasn't better. She used to call for everything, recipes, parenting advice, just to chat. We'd talk for hours. But those calls changed too. Now, when she called, there was always an agenda. Hey Mom, could you lend me $200? Just until next paycheck. Of course, sweetheart. Thanks. Love you. Gotta run. Click. She never paid me back. And I never asked because asking meant admitting my daughter only called for money. Derek got impatient whenever I mentioned feeling lonely. Mom, you need hobbies. Make friends. You can't expect us to fill all your time. As if wanting to hear my son's voice once a week was unreasonable. I'd raised them right. Taught them kindness. Sacrifice. Stayed up through sick nights. Worked double shifts for their college. Gave up my dreams for theirs. Never complained. Never asked for anything back. Because that's what mothers do. Except maybe we shouldn't. My late husband Thomas used to say, Maggie, you've got the biggest heart. But people mistake kindness for weakness. Don't let them. I should have listened. Last year, Derek visited for the first time in months. He walked through the living room of the house Thomas built with his bare hands, and I saw it, that calculating look. This place must be worth a fortune now. Have you thought about downsizing? My stomach dropped. Downsizing? Why? He shrugged. You don't need all this space. You could sell it, move into a nice apartment. We could help with the sale. That wee stuck in my throat. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about his inheritance. I'll think about it, I said with an empty smile. But I wasn't thinking about selling. I was thinking about how my son looked at his father's house and only saw dollar signs. That's when something cracked inside me. Small at first, easy to ignore, until it broke completely. Which brings me to that autumn evening. Wind smelling like rain, beef stew on the stove, Derek's favorite. I thought maybe if I called, told him I'd made it, he'd want to come over. Talk like we used to. I dialed. 4 rings. What is it now, Mom? Not hello. Just that. Nothing important, sweetheart. I wanted to hear your voice. I made your favorite. Mom. His sigh cut through me. You can't keep doing this. Calling all the time. We're busy. We have lives. My heart hammered. I didn't mean to bother. You need to understand something. You should be grateful we still answer your calls. A lot of kids wouldn't. You raised us, sure, but that doesn't mean we owe you our time every week. The room spun. "I wasn't asking you to owe me anything," I whispered. "I just missed you." Click. He'd hung up. I stood there while the stew went cold. Rain tapped the windows. And something inside me broke, not with tears or screams, but with silence. In that silence, I finally saw clearly. My children weren't the people I'd raised anymore. They were strangers who saw me as a burden, an obligation, an ATM with wrinkles. I turned off the stove, poured the stew down the drain. Then I walked to my bedroom and pulled out the envelope labeled Last Will and Testament. I stared at it for a long time and whispered something I never thought I'd say. No more. The sentencing hearing happened on a Tuesday in October. The leaves were turning gold and crimson, and the air had that crisp feeling that makes you the lawyer's office smelled like old paper and leather. I sat across from Mr. Hastings, my hands folded in my lap, watching him read over the documents I'd just signed. "Margaret," he said slowly, looking up at me over his reading glasses. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" I met his eyes. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. "This is quite drastic. Removing both your children entirely from your estate. Once this is done. Once it's done, they'll understand what they threw away." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Thomas left me this house, this land, everything we built together. He wanted it to go to family. Real family. Not people who see me as a checkbook with a pulse." Mr. Hastings had known Thomas well. They'd served on the church board together for years. He nodded slowly, understanding flickering across his weathered face. "And you're sure about the new beneficiaries?" "Beatrice Morrison, my neighbor who brings me groceries when I'm sick and never asks for a dime. Reuben Clark, the young man who fixed my porch and refused extra payment because he said helping elderly folks was just the right thing to do. And St. Clair's Orphanage, where Thomas volunteered every Saturday for 15 years. I paused, feeling the weight of what I was doing settle over me like a blanket. Not heavy, comforting. These are people who showed me kindness without expecting anything in return. That's family, Mr. Hastings. Not blood. Not obligation. Just love." He pushed the papers across the desk. "Then sign here, and initial here." My hand trembled as I picked up the pen. Not from fear. From relief. Each signature felt like shedding a weight I'd been carrying for years. The weight of trying to earn love that should have been freely given. The weight of making excuses for people who'd stopped seeing me as a person. "What will you tell them?" Mr. Hastings asked as I signed the last page. "Nothing." I set the pen down. "I'm done explaining myself to people who never listened anyway. What would you have done if your own children treated you like a burden? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story." I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in months. The sky was gray, threatening rain, but I didn't care. I drove home slowly, taking the long way past the church where Thomas and I got married 49 years ago. The building looked smaller now. Or maybe I'd just grown. When I got home, I did something I'd been putting off. I picked up my phone, opened my contacts, and stared at Derek's name. My thumb hovered over it for a long moment, then I deleted it. Miriam's name went next. It felt like cutting off a limb at first, that phantom pain where something used to be. But then the pain faded, and what was left was just space. Room to breathe. I made myself a cup of tea and sat on the porch swing Thomas built. The chains creaked in that familiar way, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. Days turned into weeks. My phone stayed quiet. At first, I checked it obsessively, half expecting Derek or Miriam to notice my silence and call, to ask if something was wrong, to care. But they didn't. And that told me everything I needed to know. Beatrice stopped by one afternoon with the blueberry pie still warm from her oven. "Thought you might like some company," she said, her round face creasing into a smile. We sat on the porch and ate pie and talked about nothing important, her roses, my herb garden, the new family that moved in down the street. Simple things. Easy things. Things that didn't cost anything but time. You seem different lately, Beatrice said, licking blueberry filling off her fork. Lighter somehow. I smiled. I stopped carrying things that weren't mine to carry. She nodded like she understood, even though I hadn't explained. That's the thing about real kindness. It doesn't need explanations. Reuben came by the next week to check on the porch repairs. He was 26, tall and gangly, with kind eyes and hands scarred from honest work. Everything holding up okay, Mrs. Elwood? Perfect, I said. How much do I owe you for the checkup? He waved me off. No charge. Just wanted to make sure you're safe. These people, Beatrice, Reuben, the volunteers at St. Clair's who sent me thank you cards for the donations I'd been making, they filled the empty spaces my children had left behind. And they did it without even trying. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon 6 weeks after I'd changed my will, a car pulled into my driveway. Miriam. My stomach tightened, but I stayed seated on the porch swing, watching her get out. She was dressed nice, too nice for a casual visit. Navy dress, pearl earrings, makeup perfect. She carried a basket covered with a checkered cloth. Mom, her voice rang out bright and false. I've missed you so much. I didn't stand. Just looked at her with the kind of calm that comes from finally seeing clearly. She climbed the porch steps, heels clicking. I brought your favorite muffins. Blueberry, just like you love. How thoughtful. My voice was neutral. Empty. Her smile flickered. Can I come in? I thought we could catch up. Of course. We sat in the living room, the same room where she used to play with her dolls as a little girl. Where Thomas would read her bedtime stories. Where family used to mean something. She set the muffin basket on the coffee table and looked around, her eyes lingering on the photographs on the wall. Thomas and me on our wedding day. Derek and Miriam as children, gap-toothed and happy. So, she said, her tone too casual. How have you been? It's been a while since we talked. Has it? I took a sip of tea. I hadn't noticed. Her smile tightened. Well, you know how busy life gets. Kids, work, everything. She trailed off, then leaned forward. Actually, Mom, I wanted to ask you something. Derek mentioned you might be thinking about updating your will. There it was. The real reason for the visit. The muffins. The dress. The sudden concern. I set my teacup down carefully. My will has already been updated, sweetheart. Her face brightened. Oh, well, that's good. It's important to keep those things current. I removed both you and Derek from it. The color drained from her face. What? You heard me. I kept my voice soft. Calm. You and your brother are no longer beneficiaries of my estate. She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. You can't be serious. I'm very serious. But why? What did we do? The question would have been funny if it wasn't so sad. You really have to ask? I stood, walking to the window. When's the last time you called me because you wanted to, not because you needed money? When's the last time Derek visited without sizing up the property value? That's not fair. Fair. I turned to face her. You want to talk about fair? I spent 30 years putting you and your brother first. Every decision, every sacrifice, every dream I gave up, it was for you. And the moment I needed you back, you made me feel like a burden. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Your brother told me I should be grateful he still answers my calls. So I'm giving you both what you wanted. Silence. Freedom. The chance to live your busy lives without your inconvenient mother getting in the way. Mom, please. The will is done, Miriam. Signed and filed. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do. I walked to the door and opened it. She sat there for another moment, her perfect makeup starting to crack around the edges. Then she grabbed her purse and stood, leaving the muffin basket behind. You'll regret this, she said, her voice shaking. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. I watched her car peel out of the driveway, gravel spitting under the tires. Then I closed the door, sat back down, and finished my tea. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe to think of new beginnings. Judge Morrison gave Nora 25 years. With her behavior and the severity of the crimes, she'd likely serve at least 20 before being eligible for parole. Gregory got 5 years, with possibility of parole after 3. His cooperation and genuine remorse had earned him some mercy. I sat in the courtroom and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No relief. Just a hollow kind of sadness for everything that had been lost. After the sentencing, I walked out of that courthouse into autumn sunshine that felt warm on my face. Helen linked her arm through mine, and we stood there for a moment, breathing in air that tasted like freedom.
"It's over," she said.
Yes, I agreed. It's over. But endings are also beginnings, and I had to figure out what came next. Patricia helped me sort through the financial mess Nora had created. Some of the money was recovered, though not all. The house in Charleston, my real home, the one I'd shared with Harold, was still mine. The debt Nora had taken out in my name was forgiven once the fraud was proven. I could have moved back there, could have returned to the life I'd left behind. But that life belonged to a different Margaret, one who trusted too easily, one who believed that family meant safety. Instead, I bought Helen's guest cottage, made it officially mine, painted the walls a soft blue that reminded me of the ocean, filled it with books and photos and the kind of clutter that makes a space feel lived in. Dr. Langford became a friend, real friend, not just the doctor who saved my life. We met for coffee once a week, and he never once made me feel like a victim or a patient. Just Margaret. Just a woman who'd survived something terrible and was learning to live again. "How do you do it?" he asked one afternoon, watching the waves crash against the shore. "Move forward after something like that?" "One day at a time," I said. It was the truth, simple as it sounded. Some days are harder than others. Some nights, I still wake up thinking I'm back in that locked room. But then I remember. The door opens. I can leave whenever I want. He nodded slowly. I still think about that note. Wonder if I should have done more. You did exactly enough, I told him firmly. You saw something wrong and you acted. That's more than most people would do. We sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd been changed by the same nightmare. The hardest part wasn't the nightmares or the fear or even the betrayal. It was the grief. I'd lost my son, not to death, but to something worse, to his own choices. To the weakness that let him lock his mother in a room and watch her deteriorate rather than stand up to his wife. I wrote him letters in prison, not because he deserved them, but because I needed to say things I'd never gotten to say. About disappointment and love, and how those two things can exist in the same heart. He wrote back once. Short letter, full of apologies that felt hollow because words can't undo actions. But at the end, he wrote something that stuck with me. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope someday you can remember me as more than the person who hurt you. I cried when I read that. Cried for the little boy who used to bring me dandelions. Cried for the man he could have been if he'd chosen differently. But I didn't write back. Some distances are too far to cross, and some betrayals cut too deep to heal. Maybe someday. But not yet. 6 months after the trial, I started volunteering at a local senior center, teaching computer classes to other elderly folks who wanted to learn how to email their grandchildren or video chat with distant relatives. One woman, Dorothy, reminded me of myself. Quiet, uncertain, recently widowed and thinking about moving in with her daughter. She's been so insistent, Dorothy said during a break. Says I shouldn't be alone. That she'll take care of everything. Something cold touched my spine. Dorothy, I said carefully, does your daughter ask about your finances a lot? Does she want to manage your accounts? She blinked. Well, yes. But that's just being helpful, isn't it? I thought about that for a long moment, about how to say what needed saying without frightening her or overstepping. It might be, I said finally, but do me a favor. Before you move in, have an independent lawyer review any documents she asks you to sign. Keep your own bank account that only you can access. And trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Dorothy studied my face. You sound like you're speaking from experience. I am, I admitted. And I almost didn't survive it. We talked for an hour after that. I told her parts of my story, enough that she understood why I was warning her. She listened with growing horror, then determination. Thank you, she said when we finished. I think I'll stay in my own place a while longer. Get to know my daughter's intentions before I make any big decisions. If you've ever seen warning signs that someone's being taken advantage of, what did you do? Your experience might help someone else. That became my purpose, I suppose. Watching. Listening. Speaking up when I saw the patterns I'd been too blind to recognize in my own life. Not every family member with financial concerns is a predator. Not every caregiver with control issues is an abuser. But the warning signs are there if you know how to look. Isolation. Control of finances. Medication changes without clear medical reasons. Locked doors and monitored phone calls, and that gradual erosion of independence disguised as help. I spoke at elder advocacy events, shared my story with support groups, wrote an article for the local paper about financial abuse that got picked up by national outlets. Some people called me brave. I didn't feel brave, just angry enough to make sure what happened to me didn't happen to someone else. The phone started ringing 3 days later. Derek. Over and over. I let it go to voicemail every single time. His messages started polite. Mom, it's Derek. Give me a call when you get this. Then confused. Mom, Miriam said something crazy. Call me back. We need to talk. Then angry. Pick up the damn phone. This is ridiculous. I deleted each one without listening all the way through. On the 4th day, he showed up. I was in the garden, pulling weeds from around my tomato plants, when I heard his car door slam. Mom, I didn't look up. Just kept working the soil, feeling the earth under my fingernails. Thomas used to say gardening was like prayer, quiet, steady, honest. Derek's shadow fell across the tomatoes. Are you seriously ignoring me right now? I'm gardening. I sat back on my heels, wiping my forehead. Did you need something? His face was red, whether from anger or the heat I couldn't tell. Did I need, are you kidding me? Miriam said you cut us out of your will. That's correct. You can't do that. I stood slowly, my knees protesting. Getting old means your body keeps score even when your mind tries to forget. I can, actually. It's my will. My house. My choice. But we're your children. Are you? The question hung in the air between us like smoke. Because children call their mother. Visit. Show up when it matters. You've done none of those things unless you wanted something. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration rolling off him in waves. This is insane. You're being manipulated. That neighbor of yours, that handyman, they're taking advantage of you. I almost laughed. Beatrice brings me pie and asks for nothing. Reuben fixed my porch and refused extra payment. The orphanage sends me cards from children who have nothing. Tell me, Derek, when's the last time you did anything for me without calculating what you'd get in return? His jaw worked, but no words came out. Last year, you stood in my living room and suggested I sell this house. Your father's house. The home he built with his own hands. You saw it and thought about money, not memories. That's not. I was trying to help. You were trying to help yourself. The truth tasted bitter. This house is worth $500,000 now. Split between you and Miriam, that's a nice chunk of change. But it was never about making sure I was comfortable, was it? It was about your inheritance. Mom, that's not true. Then why are you here now? I stepped closer, meeting his eyes. Where were you the last 6 months? When I called, and you sighed like I was bothering you. When I reached out, and you told me to be grateful you still answered. His face went pale. That's right. I remember. Every word. Every tone. Every time you made me feel small and stupid for wanting to hear my son's voice. If this story is hitting close to home, hit that like button. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it also sets you free. The wind picked up, rustling through the oak trees Thomas planted when we first bought this land. Birds called to each other, oblivious to the war happening in the garden. Derek's voice dropped. So, this is revenge? Punishing us because we got busy. This isn't revenge. I brushed dirt from my hands. Revenge would be making you pay for what you did. This is just me choosing peace. Choosing people who actually care whether I'm alive or dead. We care. Do you? I tilted my head. Prove it.
Tell me one thing about my life right now.
One thing I'm dealing with, one thing that makes me happy, one thing I need help with.
Anything.
He stared at me, mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. You can't, can you? Because you stopped paying attention years ago. I became background noise in your busy, important life. That's not fair. Fair. The word came out sharper than I meant it to. I raised you, Derek. Changed your diapers. Walked the floor with you when you had colic. Drove you to every baseball practice, every scout meeting, every birthday party. I gave up a teaching career because you needed me home. And I did it gladly, without resentment, because that's what love looks like. I took a breath, steadying myself. But love isn't a one-way street. At some point, the people you pour into should pour back. Not money. Not grand gestures. Just presence. Attention. The knowledge that you matter to them. His eyes were shiny now.
Good.
Let him feel something. When's the last time you asked about my life? When's the last time you said, I love you, and meant it? When's the last time you showed up because you wanted to, not because you wanted something? Silence. That's what I thought. I turned back to my tomatoes. The will is final, Derek. You and Miriam are adults with good jobs and nice houses. You'll be fine without my money. But those kids at St. Clair's? They have nothing. Beatrice lives on a fixed income, but still finds ways to help others. Reuben works 2 jobs and still makes time to check on an old woman he barely knows. I pulled another weed, feeling the roots give way. They deserve this more than you do. Not because I don't love you, but because they loved me first, without conditions. Derek stood there another minute, his shadow stretching long across the garden. Then he turned and walked away. His car started, gravel crunched, and he was gone. I stayed in the garden until sunset, hands deep in the soil, feeling more at peace than I had in years. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea and Thomas's old Bible. I'd kept it on the shelf since he died, too painful to open. But tonight felt right. I flipped to the front where he'd written notes in the margins. His handwriting, small and neat, filled the spaces around verses he'd loved. One note caught my eye, written next to a passage about forgiveness. Maggie, forgiveness doesn't mean letting people hurt you over and over. Sometimes it means loving them from a distance. Remember that. My eyes burned. He'd known even then that one day I might need this advice. I'm trying, Thomas, I whispered to the empty kitchen. I'm trying to do what's right. The house settled around me with creaks and sighs. Outside, an owl called from the oak tree. Life continued, indifferent to human drama. I closed the Bible and carried it to my bedroom, placing it on the nightstand where I could see it every morning. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I slept through the night without waking once. 2 months passed. Fall deepened into winter, and the house grew cold in that way old houses do, no matter how high you turn the heat. But I didn't feel cold. I felt alive. Beatrice and I started having tea every Thursday afternoon. She'd bring pastries from the bakery downtown, and we'd sit in my living room talking about everything and nothing. Her husband had died young, and she'd raised 3 kids alone while working as a nurse. "You learn quick who shows up when times are hard," she said one afternoon, stirring sugar into her tea. "Most people disappear. The ones who stay are the ones worth keeping." I thought about Derek and Miriam. Neither had called since that day in the garden. "Do you ever regret cutting people out?" I asked. She considered this, her wrinkled hands cradling the teacup. "Regret implies I did something wrong. I didn't. I just stopped letting people treat me like I didn't matter." That simple truth settled into my bones. Reuben stopped by one Saturday morning with lumber in his truck. "Your front steps are getting wobbly, Mrs. Elwood. Thought I'd replace them before someone gets hurt." "Reuben, you don't have to." "I know." His smile was genuine. "But I want to. My grandma lived alone before she passed. Always wished I'd done more for her. This helps." I made him lunch while he worked, sandwiches and lemonade, which he ate sitting on the porch railing, telling me about his classes at the community college. He wanted to be a carpenter, following in his grandfather's footsteps. "Good, honest work," I said. "Your grandfather would be proud." "I hope so." He looked at the house, squinting in the sunlight. "This place is beautiful. Built to last. They don't make houses like this anymore." "No," I agreed. "They don't." The irony wasn't lost on me. A stranger saw the value in what my own children dismissed. I'd started volunteering at St. Clair's Orphanage every Tuesday. The children there ranged from infants to teenagers, all waiting for families that might never come. The first time I walked through those doors, a little girl no more than 6 attached herself to my leg. "Are you somebody's grandma?" she asked, looking up at me with brown eyes that had seen too much too young. My throat tightened. "I am now, sweetheart." Her name was Emma. She'd been at St. Clair's for 2 years, and the director said most people wanted babies, not 6-year-olds with behavioral issues stemming from trauma. "She just needs love," the director explained. "Consistency. Someone who shows up." So I showed up. Every Tuesday, without fail. Emma would run to me the moment I arrived, and we'd read books or color or just sit together in the playroom. She'd tell me about her week, about the other kids, about the drawings she'd made. "I drew you," she said one day, handing me a picture of a stick figure with white hair and a purple dress. "That's you being my grandma." I hung that picture on my refrigerator when I got home, right in the center where I'd see it every day. These were my people now. The ones who saw me, valued me, loved me, without asking what I could give in return. Then one December morning, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Beatrice had book club on Wednesdays, and Reuben usually called first. I opened the door cautiously. Lana, Derek's wife. She stood on my porch looking uncomfortable, holding a casserole dish wrapped in foil. "Margaret," she said quietly, "can I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd confronted Miriam months ago. Lana set the casserole on the coffee table and folded her hands in her lap. "Derek doesn't know I'm here," she started. "I assumed." She took a breath. "I owe you an apology." "We both do. I was the one who told Derek to hang up that night. I heard you on speaker and I thought you were being needy, taking up time we didn't have." Her voice cracked. "But then my mom got sick last month. Cancer. And suddenly I'm the one calling her every day, crying on the phone, needing to hear her voice. And I realized, God, Margaret, I realized what we did to you." Tears streamed down her face now. "You were just lonely. You just missed your son. And we made you feel like that was wrong." I didn't say anything. Just let her talk. "Derek's been miserable since you changed the will. Not because of the money, though he's too proud to admit it. Because he knows he screwed up. He knows he hurt you in a way that can't be fixed." "Then why isn't he here?" I asked softly.
Pride. Shame.
"Fear that it's too late." She wiped her eyes. "Is it too late?" I looked at this woman who'd been part of my family for 15 years, who'd given me grandchildren I barely saw anymore, who'd stood by while my son broke my heart. I don't know, I said honestly. The will stands. That's not changing. But I paused, choosing my words carefully. If Derek wants a relationship with me, it has to be real. No more obligation calls. No more treating me like a burden. Either I matter or I don't. Lana nodded, understanding flickering in her eyes. That's fair. She stood to leave, then turned back. The kids ask about you. Riley and Mason. They wonder why they don't see Grandma anymore. That hurt worse than anything Derek had said. Bring them by, I heard myself say. Sundays at 2. But Lana, if this is just about getting back in the will. It's not, she said quickly. I promise. It's about making things right. Or trying to anyway. After she left, I sat in the quiet house wondering if I'd just made a mistake. But then I thought about Emma at St. Clair's, about her stick figure drawing, about the way she'd hugged me last Tuesday and whispered, I love you, Grandma Maggie. I'd built a new family from the pieces of my broken one. And whatever happened with Derek, with Miriam, with any of them, I'd be okay. Because I'd finally learned the difference between being loved and being used. And I'd chosen myself. Sunday at 2 o'clock, a knock came at my door. I'd spent the morning cleaning, though the house was already spotless. Nervous energy, I guess. Part of me expected no one to show up, that Lana's visit had been empty words meant to soothe her own guilt. But when I opened the door, there they were. Riley, now 9 years old, had shot up like a weed. Mason was 7, gap-toothed and grinning. Behind them, Lana held a pie. And behind her, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, stood Derek. Grandma. Riley launched herself at me, arms wrapping around my waist. The hug nearly knocked me over, but I held on tight, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. Mason joined in, and for a moment, everything else fell away. Come in, I managed, my voice thick. The kids ran straight for the kitchen, remembering the cookie jar I used to keep stocked. It was empty now. I hadn't expected visitors, but I'd made fresh chocolate chip cookies that morning. Just in case. Derek stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. We looked at each other across a distance that felt wider than the few feet of hardwood floor between us. Mom, he said finally, can we talk? We sat on the porch while Lana took the kids to the backyard. The swing creaked as I settled into it, the sound familiar and steadying. Derek sat on the steps, not quite facing me. I've been an ass, he said bluntly. There's no excuse for it. No justification. I got caught up in my life, my stress, my problems, and I forgot that you're a person with feelings. Not just
Mom.
But Margaret. A woman who lost her husband and got left behind by everyone she loved. His voice broke on the last word. I told you to be grateful we still answered your calls.
Jesus, Mom.
What kind of person says that? A person who forgot where he came from, I said quietly. A person who stopped seeing. I'm sorry. He turned to face me, and his eyes were red. I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to change the will. I needed you to know that I know what I did. And I hate myself for it. I rocked slowly in the swing, the chains singing their familiar song. Do you know what hurt the most? I asked. It wasn't the words. It was realizing that I'd become invisible to you, that you could look at me and not see me. Your father and I, we built this life so you could have better. And somewhere along the way, you started measuring my worth by what I could give you instead of who I was. He nodded, jaw tight. The will stays as it is, I continued. Not to punish you, but because those people earned it. They saw me when you didn't. They showed up when you couldn't. That matters. I understand, but I paused, weighing my next words carefully. If you want to be part of my life again, really part of it, you can. Sunday dinners. Phone calls that aren't just checking a box. Showing up because you want to, not because you feel obligated. His head snapped up. Really? Really? But Derek, if you start sliding back into old patterns, if I become a burden again, I'm done. For good this time. I'm too old to waste what time I have left on people who don't value it. You won't regret it. He stood quickly, like he was afraid I'd change my mind. I swear, Mom. Things will be different. We'll see, I said softly. Actions speak louder than words.
You taught me that.
Would you give your child a second chance after they hurt you this deeply? Drop a comment and let me know, because this is where it gets complicated. The afternoon passed in a blur of normalcy that felt almost foreign. The kids played in the yard while Derek and I sat on the porch, talking about small things.
His job.
The economy. Nothing deep, nothing heavy. But it was a start. Lana joined us after a while, and we cut into the pie she'd brought. Apple, my favorite. The sweetness of it mixed with the bitter knowledge that this might not last. That people can promise change and mean it in the moment, but old habits die hard. Still, I let myself hope. Just a little. As they packed up to leave, Riley hugged me again. Can we come back next Sunday, Grandma? I'd like that, sweetheart. Derek paused at his car, then walked back to where I stood on the porch. I know I don't deserve this, he said quietly. But thank you for not slamming the door completely. I didn't do it for you, I replied honestly. I did it for those kids. They shouldn't lose their grandmother because their father forgot how to be a son. He flinched but nodded. Fair enough. I watched them drive away, the taillights disappearing down the road. Then I went inside, cleaned up the dishes, and called Beatrice. How'd it go? She asked. Time will tell, I said. But I'm not holding my breath. She laughed, warm and knowing.
Good.
Keep living your life, Margaret. If he shows up, wonderful. If he doesn't, you've already got people who love you. She was right. That Tuesday, I went to St. Clair's like always. Emma ran to me the second I walked through the door, nearly tackling me with the force of her hug. Grandma Maggie, guess what? I got a gold star in reading. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I knelt down, ignoring my protesting knees. I'm so proud of you. Will you read with me today? Absolutely. We settled into the reading nook, her small body pressed against mine, as we worked through a story about a lost dog finding its way home. Her finger traced the words, sounding them out slowly. This, I thought. This is what matters. Not money or property or blood relations. Just showing up. Being present. Loving without conditions. After story time, the director pulled me aside. Margaret, I wanted you to know, Emma's caseworker mentioned that there's a family interested in meeting her. Potential adoption. My heart lurched. That's wonderful. It is. But she's going to need support through the transition. She's attached to you. Would you be willing to stay involved? Maybe video calls, letters, visits if the family allows. Of course, I said immediately. Whatever she needs. The director smiled. You're special, you know that? Most volunteers don't invest this deeply. I thought about Derek's words, about being forgotten, about the pain of invisibility. Everyone deserves to be seen, I said simply. Especially children. That night, back home, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and thought about the strange shape my life had taken. I'd lost my children, or thought I had. I'd built a new family from strangers and forgotten dreams. And now, maybe, I was getting pieces of the old family back. But it didn't matter as much as it once would have, because I'd learned something crucial in the process. My worth wasn't tied to whether my children loved me. It existed independent of them. I was valuable because I was me, because I showed up, because I loved freely and honestly. And that couldn't be taken away. The phone rang. I glanced at it, saw Miriam's name flash across the screen. My finger hovered over the answer button. Then, slowly, I set the phone face down on the table and took another sip of tea. If she wanted to talk, really talk. She knew where I lived. But I was done chasing people who'd already decided I wasn't worth the effort. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Winter was coming on hard this year, but inside I was warm. Miriam showed up 3 days later, without calling first. I was in the kitchen making soup when I heard her car in the driveway. Through the window, I watched her sit there for a full 5 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel. Finally, she got out and walked to the door like she was approaching a firing squad. I let her knock twice before answering. "Mom." Her voice was small, different from the polished confidence she'd had last time. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, letting her in but saying nothing. She followed me to the kitchen where I went back to stirring the soup. Carrots, celery, chicken, Thomas's recipe. "I heard Derek came by," she said, standing awkwardly near the table. "He did. And you're giving him another chance?" I tasted the soup, added salt. "I'm giving his children a chance to know their grandmother. Derek's just part of the package." She flinched. "What about me? What about my kids?" Now I turned to face her. "When's the last time you brought them by, Miriam? When's the last time you called for any reason other than money?" Her face crumpled. "I know I messed up." "You did more than mess up. You used me. Every phone call was a transaction. Every visit had a price tag. And when I needed you, when I was lonely and hurting, you couldn't be bothered." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I was struggling, Mom. Bills piling up, marriage falling apart, kids needing everything. So was I." My voice stayed steady. "Struggling. Lonely. Watching my husband's memory fade while my children forgot I existed. But you know what? I didn't make that your problem. I just wanted connection. Love. The basic things families are supposed to give each other." She wiped her eyes with shaking hands. "I'm sorry. God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I took you for granted. Treated you like an ATM instead of a person. And I hate myself for it." I turned back to the soup, letting silence fill the space between us. "Is there any way?" she started, voice breaking. "Any way I can fix this?" "The will doesn't change," I said firmly. "That's final. But if you want to be part of my life again, really part of it, you can earn your way back. The same terms I gave Derek. Show up. Be present. Prove that I matter to you as a person, not a bank account." "I will." She moved closer. "I swear I will."
Please, Mom.
"Don't shut me out completely." I ladled soup into bowls, set one in front of her. "Actions, Miriam. Not words. I'm done believing promises." We ate in silence, the only sound the scraping of spoons against ceramic. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't warm, but it was honest. And maybe that was enough. After she left, I called Mr. Hastings.
"Just checking," I said.
"The will is ironclad, right? No way they can contest it. Solid as a rock, Margaret. You are of sound mind, no coercion. Everything properly witnessed and filed. They could try to challenge it, but they'd lose." "Good." I felt the tension leave my shoulders. "Thank you." That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, watching stars pierce the winter sky. The cold bit at my face, but I didn't mind. I'd spent so long trying to hold on to people who didn't want to be held, trying to force love from hearts that had closed, trying to matter to people who'd decided I didn't. But now I was free. Free to love who loved me back. Free to build family from kindness instead of obligation. Free to choose peace over pain. The porch swing creaked in the wind, and I could almost hear Thomas's voice. "You're doing fine, Maggie. Just fine." I smiled into the darkness, believing him. Christmas came cold and bright. I woke early, made coffee, and looked at the decorations I'd put up. Simple, tasteful, nothing like the elaborate displays from years past when the house overflowed with family. This year felt different. Lighter somehow. Beatrice arrived first, carrying a casserole that smelled like heaven. "Merry Christmas, dear." Ruben came next with his girlfriend, a shy nursing student named Maria, who kept complimenting the house. They brought wine and homemade cookies shaped like stars. Derek and his family showed up at noon like we'd planned. The kids burst through the door with wrapped presents and excited chatter. Lana hugged me carefully, and Derek squeezed my shoulder, a small gesture that felt enormous. Thanks for having us, Mom. Thanks for showing up. Miriam arrived last, alone. Her husband had taken the kids to his mother's, she explained quietly. The divorce was moving forward. I hugged her, felt her trembling, and whispered, "One day at a time." We gathered around the table I'd set with Thomas's good china. Beatrice said grace, her voice strong and sure, thanking God for chosen family and second chances. The meal passed in laughter and stories. Ruben talked about finishing his carpentry certification. Maria described a difficult patient who'd finally turned a corner. The kids acted out a play they prepared. Derek helped serve dessert without being asked. And Miriam stayed after everyone else left, helping me wash dishes in comfortable silence. "This is nice," she said softly, drying a plate. "Being here without wanting something. Just being." "It is nice," I agreed. "Feels real." She set the plate down carefully. "I'm going to keep showing up, Mom. Even when it's hard. Even when life gets crazy. You deserve that." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw someone trying. Imperfectly, messily, but genuinely trying. "That's all I ever wanted," I told her. After she left, I sat in the quiet house, surrounded by the debris of a good day. Wrapping paper scattered across the floor. Half-empty wine glasses on the coffee table. The lingering smell of roast and laughter. I picked up the drawing Emma had made me at St. Clair's before her adoption went through. She'd drawn our whole found family. Beatrice, Ruben, Maria, me, and in the corner, 2 stick figures labeled Derek and Miriam with question marks above their heads. Smart kid. She understood that some relationships were solid while others remained uncertain. I hung the drawing on the refrigerator next to a photo from today. Everyone crowded around the table, faces bright with genuine joy. Both belong there. Past and present. Blood and chosen. All of it messy and complicated and real. That night, I dreamed of Thomas. We were young again, dancing in the kitchen to music only we could hear. He spun me around, laughing, and I felt light as air. "You did good, Maggie," he said in the dream. "Real good." I woke smiling, tears on my cheeks, heart full. January brought bitter cold and a letter that changed everything. It came from a law firm in Chicago, thick envelope, official letterhead, the kind of mail that makes your stomach drop. I stared at it over morning coffee, afraid to open it. Finally, I tore it open. Inside was a letter from Emma's adoptive parents. "Dear Mrs. Elwood, Emma talks about you constantly. Grandma Maggie this and Grandma Maggie that. Our daughter loves you deeply, and we wanted to reach out personally to thank you for the impact you've had on her life. We know you were concerned about staying in touch after the adoption. We want you to know that you're not just welcome in Emma's life, you're essential to it. We'd love to arrange regular visits, phone calls, whatever works for you. Emma needs her Grandma Maggie. And frankly, after hearing so much about you, we'd like to know you too." My hands shook as I read it twice, 3 times, making sure I understood correctly. They wanted me in Emma's life. Not as an obligation. Not out of pity. But because I mattered. I called the number at the bottom of the letter immediately. A woman answered, voice warm. "Mrs. Elwood? Please call me Margaret. Or Maggie. Or..." My voice broke. "Or Grandma, if you'd like." She laughed softly. "Emma would love that. Can we schedule a visit? We're only 3 hours away." We set a date for the following weekend. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and cried. Big, ugly, grateful tears that washed away months of uncertainty. Emma hadn't forgotten me. She'd fought to keep me in her life. That's what real love looked like. Derek called that afternoon. "Mom? You okay?" You sound different. I told him about Emma, about the letter, about the visit we'd planned. That's amazing, Mom. Really? You deserve good things. So, do you, honey? How are things with you and Lana? Better. We started counseling, working on communication, priorities, all that stuff. He paused. You were right. About a lot of things. I got so focused on success and money that I forgot what actually matters. It's not too late to remember, I said gently. I know. And Mom, I'm going to keep showing up. Not because of the will or guilt or anything except that I love you, and I was an idiot. You were, I agreed. But idiots can change. He laughed, and it sounded real. Genuine. Like the boy I'd raised before life got complicated. After we hung up, I made myself lunch and thought about how strange life was. How loss could lead to gain. How endings could birth new beginnings. How sometimes the family you choose loves you better than the family you're born into. But sometimes, the family you're born into learns to love you the way you deserved all along. The weekend visit with Emma and her new parents exceeded every expectation. They were kind people, patient and loving, and Emma had blossomed under their care. She ran to me the moment I arrived, wrapping her arms around my waist. Grandma Maggie, I knew you'd come. Of course I came, sweetheart. I'll always come when you need me. We spent the day together, all of us. Emma showed me her new room, her toys, her books. Her new parents made lunch and asked about my life with genuine interest. They shared stories about Emma's adjustment, her progress, her joy. She's changed our lives, Emma's new mom said quietly. Made us better people. She changed mine too, I replied, watching Emma color at the table. Reminded me what unconditional love looks like. As I drove home that evening, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete. Whole. Like all the broken pieces had finally found their way back together, rearranged into something even more beautiful than before. Spring came softly, melting winter's grip with warm rain and brave flowers. I worked in the garden, planting tomatoes and herbs, feeling the earth come alive under my hands. Derek and his family had been coming every Sunday for months now. Real visits. Real conversations. Riley helped me plant seeds while Mason chased butterflies. Derek and I talked about everything, his work stress, my volunteer days, memories of Thomas, plans for the future. I'm proud of you, Mom, he said one afternoon, standing beside me in the garden. For standing up for yourself. For not letting us treat you like garbage. I'm proud of you for learning, I replied. Not everyone does. Miriam had been showing up too, though less consistently. Her divorce was messy, her life chaotic. But she called when she said she would. Brought the kids by once a month. Sent cards for no reason. Small things. But they mattered. Beatrice and I had become inseparable. She was teaching me to knit, and I was teaching her to make Thomas's famous chili. We attended church together. Went to movies, shared meals and stories and silences. You saved my life, I told her once. Nonsense, she replied. You saved your own life. I just reminded you that you could. Reuben had finished his certification and started his own carpentry business. I was his first client, hiring him to build raised garden beds and repair the shed out back. He worked with the same care Thomas had, measuring twice, cutting once, taking pride in honest work. You remind me of my husband, I told him one day. He smiled. That's the best compliment I've ever gotten. Emma's family had become part of my routine too. Monthly visits, weekly video calls, constant text updates with photos and stories. Emma sent me drawings and report cards and breathless accounts of her adventures. I told my teacher about you, she said during one call. About how you're my special grandma. She said everyone should have someone like you. My heart swelled. Everyone should have someone like you too, sweetheart. This was my family now. Not perfect. Not traditional. But real. Built on choice and effort and genuine affection. One May afternoon, I sat on the porch with a glass of lemonade, watching clouds drift across blue sky. The house felt alive again, full of plans and possibilities and people who actually cared. The phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Elwood? This is Janet from St. Clair's. We have a situation and wondered if you could help. My stomach tightened. What kind of situation? We have a teenage girl who just arrived. 15, removed from an abusive home, scared out of her mind. She needs someone stable, someone who understands. You came to mind immediately. What do you need from me? Just time. Presence. Could you come by this week? Meet with her? She needs to know that good people exist. I didn't hesitate. I'll be there tomorrow. The girl's name was Sophie. She had dark hair and darker eyes that had seen things no child should see. She sat across from me in the St. Clair's common room, arms crossed, walls up. I don't need a pity, Grandma, she said flatly. Good, I replied, because I don't do pity, but I do show up. And if you want someone who'll listen without judging, who'll be there when things get hard, I'm volunteering. She studied me suspiciously. Why? Because someone showed up for me when I needed it. Figured I should pass it on. We talked for an hour. Small things at first, music, school, books. Then deeper things, fear, loss, the strange shape of hope when everything else has fallen apart. When I left, Sophie called after me. Will you come back? Every week, I promised. You can count on it. And I meant it. Because this was who I was now. Not the woman desperately chasing her children's affection. Not the forgotten mother sitting alone in an empty house. But someone who chose to love deliberately. Who showed up for people who needed showing up for. Who built family from kindness instead of obligation. That night, I updated my calendar. Sunday dinners with Derek. Tuesday afternoons at St. Clair's. Thursday tea with Beatrice. Monthly visits with Emma. Wednesday sessions with Sophie. My life was full. My heart was fuller. And the woman who'd once felt invisible now knew she was seen. 2 years later, I turned 75. The house overflowed with people. Derek and his family, Miriam and her kids, Beatrice, Reuben, and Maria, now engaged, Emma and her parents, Sophie, who'd been placed with a wonderful foster family but still visited me weekly, and half a dozen volunteers from St. Clair's. We spilled out onto the lawn, laughter mixing with music and the smell of grilled food. Thomas's house had become what he'd always wanted, a home filled with love. As the sun set, painting the sky pink and gold, Derek stood and clinked his glass. I want to say something. He looked at me, eyes bright. Mom, 2 years ago, I was the worst son imaginable. I took you for granted, treated you like you didn't matter, said things I can never take back. You would have been justified in cutting me off completely. His voice thickened. But you didn't. You gave me a chance to be better, to show up, to learn what love actually looks like. And I'm grateful every single day that you're my mom. Miriam stood next. Me too. You taught us that love isn't obligation, it's choice. And you chose to let us back in even when we didn't deserve it.
Thank you, Mom.
For everything. Beatrice raised her glass. To Margaret, the strongest woman I know. You turned heartbreak into healing. That's a gift. Emma jumped up, pigtails bouncing. To Grandma Maggie, who taught me that family is whoever shows up. Sophie added quietly, to the woman who showed up for me when no one else did. Reuben finished, to Margaret Elwood, proof that kindness isn't weakness. It's power. They all drank, and I sat there overwhelmed, heart full to bursting. Later, as people filtered out, Derek pulled me aside. Mom, I know the will hasn't changed. I know we're not getting the house or the money. And I want you to know I'm okay with that. More than okay. Those people deserve it. They were there when we weren't. Derek. Let me finish. I just want you to know that what I've gotten back these past 2 years is worth more than any inheritance. Having you in my life, really in my life. That's the real gift. I hugged him tight, this son who'd hurt me and learned and grown. I love you, I whispered. I love you too, Mom. After everyone left, I sat on the porch swing alone. The stars came out one by one, scattered diamonds on velvet black. I thought about the woman I'd been 2 years ago, lonely, heartbroken, feeling worthless because the people she'd raised had forgotten her value. And I thought about the woman I was now, surrounded by chosen family, making a difference in young lives, living with purpose and peace. The will still stood. When I died, this house would go to Beatrice, Reuben, and St. Clair's. The savings would fund scholarships for kids like Emma and Sophie. Everything Thomas and I built would continue helping people who needed help. My children knew. They'd accepted it. And somehow, that acceptance had freed them to love me honestly instead of strategically. I heard Thomas's voice on the wind, warm and sure. You did it, Maggie. You chose yourself.
Chose peace.
Chose love that didn't cost you your dignity. I smiled into the darkness. We did it together, my love. All of it. The porch swing creaked its familiar song. Inside, the house settled with contented sighs. And I sat there feeling more at peace than I'd ever felt before. Because I'd learned the most important lesson life had to teach. Your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. It's determined by how you treat yourself. By the boundaries you set. By the people you choose to keep close. Silence isn't surrender. It's the language of self-respect. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just walking away and building something beautiful from the ashes. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that choosing peace isn't giving up, it's winning. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more stories about quiet justice, resilience, and the power of choosing yourself. Drop a comment below about your own experience with family struggles, second chances, or finding your people. Your story might inspire someone else who's struggling right now. Thank you for being part of this family. Until the next story, remember you matter. You always have.